I'm Cameron Platt, Principal Broker of Abio Properties, and this is Stump the Broker. Today's question on Stump the Broker is one that I get a lot, and it's sometimes fun, sometimes not, mostly not fun. It can be simple, it can be complicated, and it goes like this. My buyer client wants to cancel the contract. What do I do? Sometimes things don't work out. That's okay. We always have solutions. In real estate, as in life, not everything goes according to plan. Sometimes you have a client who doesn't want to perform under the contract for whatever reason that they may have. So the first thing that I do is ask, how deep are you into the contract? This goes to the presence of contingencies in a contract. A contingency is sort of an escape valve. If a certain condition isn't present, then it allows the party to get out of performing the contract. So for a buyer, this is typically an inspection contingency, a loan contingency, a contingency that the property appraises for the contract price. There are also some contingencies we don't see too often in a seller's market like we're in now, and that is like the contingency that the buyer has to sell their current home in order to buy a replacement home. If there is a contingency in place and it can be exercised, full stop, that's the best way to get out of contract. Cancel according to that contingency and everybody goes on their merry way. Deposits are refunded, hopefully. If you don't have a contingency in place and the seller makes a late disclosure that's material to the transaction, this can typically give rise to a very narrow, very specific right of rescission. This would be something like the seller disclosing a week before closing that there's this huge sinkhole under the primary bedroom, that sort of thing. Pretty rare. We'll go over that in detail in another video. Another way to get out of a contract is if the seller isn't performing. If the seller is breaching their obligations under the contract, the buyer can give them a notice to perform. If the seller doesn't cure that breach, the buyer can cancel. Another question I ask is, why does the buyer want to cancel? Because sometimes a buyer doesn't really want to cancel the contract. They still want the house, they just don't want to purchase it under the current terms or at the current price. So even if there are no contingencies left to be exercised, there's nothing that says that two willing parties can't renegotiate a contract that's already in place. It may actually behoove the seller to be a little permissive in what they're willing to give back in order to avoid going back on the market, extended holding costs, etc. So give it a try. And the last question is, how badly does the client want to get out of contract? I ask this because there's always the nuclear option of simply walking away from the contract, canceling without a reason. Now, this is a breach of contract, so it should not be done lightly. Talk to an attorney before you counsel your client to simply breach the contract. Actually have them talk to an attorney personally, because it can give rise to a whole host of consequences that the buyer may not be willing to take on, like losing their deposit, getting sued for additional damages, specific performance of the contract, etc., etc. On a final note, and you'll notice this is sort of a theme with me, don't get sued. It's expensive, it takes away from your productive time, and it pisses off your broker. So be cautious, get creative, and serve your clients' needs. This has been Stump the Broker.